Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the PowettPlay Podcast. It's me, Jordan Shannon, and as always, I'm joined by Kieran Powell. How are you, Kai?
Not bad, Jordan. How are you?
Well, straight off the press, the game's finished. Unfortunately, West Indies have come, fallen short against in the first ODI against Ireland. Getting beat by 124 runs. Me and you have been speaking a little bit, obviously, throughout the day, watching the game and whatnot. What is your overall takes on the result, really?
Um, Obviously disappointed, surprised, not necessarily. As I
Right,
said,
okay.
for me, a takeaway from this series would be a 2-1 series victory. So obviously
Right.
that's the one game. The last time the West Indies played in ODI was December, and there
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, these guys haven't been playing any cricket together coming into this.
No.
So again, just a few days in Ireland before the game. Um, Not probably the ideal preparation
No.
that you'd like. So again, as I said, not necessarily surprised, but hopefully that's just knocking off the rust, and then going forward into the rest of the series, they can sort of up the ante a bit now.
Yeah, I think the point you make there about they haven't played much, and that looked like you could quite clearly see that really a little bit, especially
Yeah,
Shamar Jones. And I apologise obviously for pinpointing him out, but he just looked like he lacked overs, really.
yeah.
To be
I
honest
mean,
with
I was gonna get to him because I'm surprised that he played this match. I thought that they would have gone with a Jaden Sears to start with, given that he's actually been over in England playing county cricket
you. Yeah,
for the past, what's that, month and a half, 2 months.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so he would have been at least a bit more used to the conditions. And Shamar Joseph hasn't really played that much cricket of late. I
no,
think that the West Indies board are going to have to probably have a sit down with him and sort of
yeah,
take control of, I guess, his career in a bit. Obviously, players, I mean, have their own ambitions. Um, they have to discuss with their agents and their families, etc.
of course.
But I think that for someone that's had majority of, well, all of his success thus far
Yeah,
coming from red ball cricket, test cricket, for me personally, I think that at this stage of his career, he would have been better served probably playing the early season of the county championship, where
yeah,
he could get a lot more overs into his body, play a
yeah,
lot more cricket, obviously be exposed to different conditions
yeah,
and learn a bit more about himself and his game that he can take forward into the rest of his career
yeah,
across formats. I think
yeah,
that you can see a marked difference and improvement, for example, in a Jaden Sears after he started playing county cricket and he was already obviously, to me personally, at a higher level than Shamar Joseph is at the start of his career anyway. But you can
yeah,
see a big improvement in skill. Another player that you can see a marked improvement in is Jamel Warrican. He wasn't playing county cricket, but for the past 3 to 4 years before he got back into the West Indies team, every summer he was playing club cricket in the
yeah,
UK,
yep,
getting reps, getting used to bowling lots of overs in different conditions every weekend, getting used to taking wickets and being the responsible person for his team to be successful and bowling teams out on a weekly basis.
yeah,
So there's nothing that beats repetition. And Shamar Joseph has pretty much been sidelined for, what's that, 3, 4 months now
yeah,
at the IPL, sitting down, not getting any game time. I don't think he played any games this season, and he played one game last season.
yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, I guess ultimately guys want to maximize their playing careers and their earning potential, but you also have to look at not just short-term gains, but the long-term overall benefits and what can help you not just today, but for your career and your life after
yeah,
cricket as well.
yeah,
So I think that that's something that they really need to discuss with him and start getting miles into his legs
yeah,
so he can start bowling and developing a lot more. Because from what we've seen when he burst onto the scene to now, he hasn't necessarily progressed
no.
that much. And I think that for the betterment of West Indies cricket, his talent and his ability needs to be harnessed and developed as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to jump. Obviously, I know I jumped the gun there mentioning Shamar Joseph, which the points you mentioned there are absolutely spot on. And part of the reason why I do think he did play, and I think he will play all the other two games. By the way, my only opinion is because I think they're keen to get overs in his legs.
And for me, that's where I think that he should have been even today, with him not playing, I think that he could have been in the nets bowling to one of the batters that didn't play, whether you have him bowl, let's say, 3 overs at the start of play before the game starts, you have him bowl maybe 5 overs at lunch, have him bowl maybe the next 4 overs at the end of play. So, you slowly build him up into into the series, because then, something like today, obviously he's played, but you have to look at the impact on his confidence as well
Yes, I
that,
was just
that
going to say
today
that.
would have had, because um, it's sort of a cat and mouse
Of
situation where
course it
you
is.
want to get miles into his legs, but then something like today happens, and he may not outwardly show it, but it may have chipped his confidence, which I'm hoping is not the case. I'm hoping that if he does play again on Friday, that he rebounds and comes back nicely,
Yeah, absolutely.
because his talent dictates that, he should obviously get opportunities. But again, for me, it's just the lack of match play leading up into this,
Yeah.
and then because he's so young into his career and he hasn't played much cricket outside of international cricket anywhere, regionally
No.
or
Yeah, yeah,
elsewhere, then he doesn't really know himself or his game as much as other players do.
yeah. But that's where obviously we'll talk about the bowling aspect in terms of the West Indies won the toss, opted to bowl. Um, Ultimately, from my opinion, I just don't think they got the lengths right at all early doors. Especially when you win the toss and bowl, you want your bowlers to come out firing and get those lengths spot on, really.
I mean, that's a cliche thing about playing in English conditions. Obviously, you want to pitch the ball up at first and
Yeah,
see
no, yeah,
what's available to you. And if there's no string and offer, then you pull your length back. I think that, as you rightfully mentioned, they probably started a bit too short.
yeah,
If you look at the comparisons of the way the West Indies bowled up front as opposed to where the Irish bowled up front, and
yeah,
the way we got our wickets as opposed to the way they got their wickets early doors, because once you do that much damage early up, it's kind of hard for teams to rebound, because
yeah,
obviously your best players are batting 1 to 6.
yeah,
So if you're getting 4 or 5 wickets in the power play in the first 20 overs, then you're going to make it a hard task for teams to sort of rebound from that.
yeah,
And that's what Ireland were able to do. I mean, obviously, there was a good partnership with Roston and Matthew Forde. And I think that, um, as I alluded to in the last podcast, and I was on Andrew Mason's show last night, you're going to see a lot more productivity from Roston, in my opinion, because of the responsibility of being Test captain now.
yeah,
And if you
yeah,
look, yeah, you look at the way he batted today, you can see that he's already starting to gear towards and shaping towards being a more productive player.
yeah,
Matthew Forde as well is someone that we identified in the team of the tournament from the regional 40 season. And his batting today was on display, and
yeah,
it's obviously just a snapshot of what he could potentially develop into. But I think that it's a good sign for his overall growth, and I guess West Indies cricket holistically, if you can continue to develop a Matthew Forde, because I think that he may have a role to play in red ball cricket in the future as well.
yeah, definitely. The one thing I did pick up on a little bit today was that lack of experience that obviously, well, Shamar Josie, I think it's his ODI debut today, actually. Or was
No, I think it's
was
probably
his
like his
second
second
game?
or
Yeah.
third.
So, yeah, second or third game. And then obviously Matthew Thor's is maybe seventh or eighth.
Yeah,
And what you saw with Alzari, he used his experience.
yeah.
He knew when to go, like you said, Fuller and taking his lengths back. And I think that, you know, hopefully with them two there, having the likes of Alzari with them, they're going to learn loads. That experience will play a massive help them along the way as well, really.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my only issue with Alzari has ever been that the lengths that he bowls. I think that he can bowl the ball probably a few inches fuller,
Yeah,
because he's got obviously a natural outswinger, and at his pace, if
yeah,
the ball does anything, he's probably going to be a threat. And I think that's where he doesn't get necessarily as much wickets as he could do
yeah,
across formats,
yeah,
especially starting up, and especially now that he's bowling the new ball as well.
yeah,
The middle overs and the death overs, he obviously understands and
yeah, big
executes
time.
pretty well.
Yeah,
And if you look at his numbers in terms of games and wickets taken, it's up there with the best in the world. So I think that that's never been a problem in terms of his wicket taking ability to through the middle phases and the back end of a
yeah,
game. But if he gives himself that bit more of a chance by pitching the ball up
Yeah.
early on, I think that he could be taking his game to a completely different level.
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously like leading into the middle overs, I thought actually Roston Bull pretty, I know he was a bit under the pump at the time, but I thought he pulled it back quite well, and he sort of mixed his length and his pace up quite nicely, really, to reduce. I felt that he reduced the boundaries at that point. I know they took a lot of singles in that period of time, but I thought he reduced the boundaries really at that time. I know he still went, he still conceded a few here and there, but I thought in those middle overs, I thought Justin Greaves bowled well as well. To be fair,
I was just about to mention, I think that partnership, because obviously Justin Graves, when he plays for the Leeward Islands, he doesn't really do that much bowling.
no,
The last two, 3 games of the 4-day season, obviously he bowled a bit more overs than
yeah,
he would have for the past year or so. Obviously, knowing that he's going to have to be a full all rounder to
yeah,
get into the various West Indies teams, and obviously, he's been selected across formats.
yeah,
So, I think that he used his variations and his skill quite well. Obviously, for Roston and Morty, there's not really going to be much spin on offer
no,
in Ireland or the UK, so it's going to be more about varying your pace, beating batters through the ear through slight
yeah,
variations of pace, angles, deception, things like that. But in terms of getting the ball to rip, that's not how they're going to get wickets. And
no,
obviously, guys are going to try and target the spinners as well and force you to bring your
yeah,
seam bowlers back earlier than you'd like as well.
yeah,
So it's it's a great opportunity for them because that then brings them into the game where they can potentially get a few wickets with guys
yeah,
trying to go after them as well.
yeah,
So it's going to be an interesting next, I guess, two
yeah.
games and the series coming up in England as well, where those guys will definitely go hard at the bowling attack.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned there about Moti. One thing I did pick up on him, and I think as the series is between Ireland and England go, I think he'll figure a few bits out. I thought he used his crease really well today, and naturally, like you mentioned there wasn't any turn there to be had, but the way he changed his angles, I thought was something that I picked up on, and hopefully over the next two, with Friday and then Sunday, and then over here, I think that we'll see hit, I'm sure we'll see his performances get better and better. And potentially there might be a little bit of turn as, it has been dry over here, for it's been pretty, for a good few weeks now, really. So there might be a bit of turn as, as the weeks go on. Because I don't, as much as as much as the scorecard, they've been comfortably beaten, no doubt. But I do think there were a little bit of positives and some things to sort of work on, for Friday, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, as you've seen, like it's not, I'm not bashing them at all because I
No.
understand. Obviously, they've come in
Yeah.
without much cricket,
Yeah.
and then the top order gets blown away like that, so you don't really
They bowl
expect
well.
much more. I think that Roston and Matthew Forde put on a good partnership. For me, I think it goes back to obviously because it was such an extended gap between the last series played and this. Um, the guys that were in the Caribbean and were available to the West Indies board, I think that they should have mini camps, whether
Yeah.
it be if a guy is not doing anything or he's not playing
Yeah.
franchise cricket or there's no regional cricket on whatever. I think that even if you bring these guys in maybe once a month for like a 7-day camp where you
Yeah.
just work on skills, make sure they're hitting balls, make sure everything's ticking over, fitness work, etc. And
Yeah.
then before going on tours, you make it mandatory that even if it's just two guys available, because other guys are around the world at different places,
Yeah.
guys come in for at least 7 days before departing for a tour and start that preparation so that they go into a series with a lot more preparation under their belt as opposed to um, being left to their own devices at home and
Yeah.
turning up a few days in Ireland before a series starts.
Yeah.
Because I mean, as I said, the landscape of international cricket now is such that guys are all over the place, but it's never a situation where
No.
every single person in a squad is somewhere.
No.
There are going to be a few players that are in the Caribbean at home preparing and getting ready for that series. So you need to bring those guys together and make sure that at the very least, those guys are 100% fit. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you need to bring in. And then you can bring in the players that you up and running, and then holistically the team
Yeah.
will gel together probably a bit quicker.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned, it is going to be always going to be hard because of the nature of the game at this moment in time. But if you can obviously, plan and have these sort of mini camps, that it's only going to help the situation. It's only going to benefit the team down the line and stuff. But I know we touched on it before. You mentioned obviously about Roston. I think that was a great innings for him today in terms of showing that grittiness. It shows what you can do in that middle order. Whether it be a situation where they're struggling, and that's where you mentioned it. You spoke last night on a podcast that you did about his leadership, and you spoke on our podcast last week about that extra responsibility. I think that was it was nice to see that, and it sort of put a few of people's opinions really, you know, to sort of this is what I'm about, and this is who I am really.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great if he continued on and whether it become not out or, push towards 100. But
Close, yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, he still got a half century. And, you know, people are funny because people are going to say, well, he got a half century against Ireland. But then they're also going to say, we lost against Ireland.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
you can't necessarily please
No,
people all the time. You've got to
no, of
make
course,
up your mind and pick one poison. You can't have it
no,
both ways. So,
exactly,
no, I think
exactly.
that it was good for him personally, coming off of again not much cricket being at home in the Caribbean and then coming into this series. And we also have to realize as well that this is barring a few players being absent. This is the best team. Like this is literally the best set of players that we
Yeah,
have in the Caribbean available to us to play ODI cricket.
yeah,
So I mean, it's not a situation where we need to get down on these guys. It's a situation where we need to find out the best way
yeah,
possible of making sure that these guys are always coming to a series prepared and ready.
yeah,
Whether that be, as I said, get them into mini camps before, I think that should be mandatory. But I would have liked as well for them to at least have played maybe one practice match going into the series over in Ireland. I'm not sure if they did that, but that would be beneficial as well to
yeah,
get some game time out in the middle in those conditions
yeah.
before a series starts because they were in Ireland for more than enough time. I think they were there for
I
probably
think it was a week, wasn't
a
it?
week
Yeah,
exactly. So if you had, you know, a practice match maybe 3 days out from the first ODI, that would have
yeah,
been beneficial for the guys as well there to sort of help to knock off that rust as well.
yeah,
So
definitely,
I'm not too disheartened. I expect a better performance come
absolutely,
Friday. Um, you also have to look at the long run. The West Indies need to win as many games as possible to
absolutely.
qualify for the T20 World Cup, and it's an inexperienced team, batting and bowling wise.
Yeah,
When you look at the team, so for me, having realized that, I personally thought that, I mean, obviously Django made a century in debut, but I thought that Roston would have batted ahead of maybe a Justin Graves to have that
yeah.
inexperience
To
balance.
break it up a bit.
Exactly, so that you have that level of
Yeah,
continuity.
yeah,
Obviously knowing that Sherfane Rutherford isn't there, a Shimron Hetmyer, who I am a massive fan of, and I think that he's been hugely mishandled by West Indies cricket in the past, let's say 5, 6 years, is joining the team for the England series.
yeah.
Obviously, Romario Shepherd is not there
No.
for the back end as well. So taking all of those things into consideration, um, funnily enough, I'm just looking at my fingers when I was calling out those names. That's three Guyanese players as well. Um,
You know how
no,
to
but
win.
exactly taking those things into consideration, I think that um, Friday should be a better game, and just the reality of the situation, Pride. Um, I think that guys will come up better on Friday.
Do you think they'll make any changes?
I think Jaden Sales will definitely play. And it was surprising as well, not only the fact that because he's been here playing cricket, but the last ODI series they had against Bangladesh, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, wasn't he player of the series? I think
Uh,
he might have been player of the series. If not, he was pretty close to being player of the series. He had quite a few games, and that was sort of his breakout ODI season.
but is this not where the because he's got overs there, he's been playing over here? Are they not too concerned in terms of him playing immediately.
Well, I mean, we need to win as many games
Yeah,
as possible.
that's
So
what you were saying before. It's
yeah,
that balance between both.
yeah. Yeah, and whilst we're saying they're not too concerned, he sort of serves two purposes at the same time
Of
because he's
course.
still inexperienced in ODI cricket. I don't think he has five ODI games.
Yeah,
If he does, he definitely doesn't have 10.
yeah,
So you need to get those miles of international cricket into his legs as well.
yeah,
Um, so it would have just been good for me personally. I would have brought Shamar Joseph in for the third ODI once I've had enough time to work with him, knowing that he's not coming from much cricket as well, and then
yeah,
played him through the England series as well, going into that Australian Test series. But all in all, unfortunately, we have to take it as a warm up game, even though it's an international fixture. But as I said, I expect a huge bounce
yeah.
back in the second ODI.
No, I think the way that you broke that down is it's you're not being negative. We're not criticizing. It's a case of understanding conditions. It's understanding what's been before. Not been playing much and stuff. So I think that the way you explained everything there makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. And it'd be interesting to see how they go about it moving forward for the second game. I wanted to ask you from a player's perspective, when you've got the you mentioned there they've had I've had a week in Ireland, so they've got obviously getting used to conditions and practicing. And then when you've got such a quick turnaround, what would you try and do with your day tomorrow?
Some guys probably won't practice tomorrow. More be like a mental reset. But it's
Right.
just looking at film, obviously understanding, I guess, from a batting standpoint,
Yeah.
what you could have done better from a bowling standpoint, how you could probably compare to the way they bowled as opposed
Yeah.
to the way we bowled, and try and take away as much learning as possible
Yeah.
from the slight discrepancies between both sides,
Yeah.
to narrow the margins. But again, a lot of it comes down to we lost so many wickets early up that there was never really going to be a realistic chance of us winning the game.
Yeah.
So it all starts with the top, building that platform that
Yeah.
then you can go on to try and give yourself a chance to win the game. I think that 300 was a bit much. If they could have restricted Ireland to, let's say, 280,
Yeah.
270, then that would have been better. So I mean, there are a few little things that, here and there they'll try and tweak.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, as I said, with those small changes, the only change in the 11 I see is Jaden Sears coming in.
Do you see them? I know you mentioned obviously about maybe putting Roston higher than Justin Graves. Do you see any other batting lineup changes potentially?
I don't think that they will do. I think that they'll give it another chance.
Yeah.
So I think that the change will probably come in the third ODI if
Yeah.
there is a change. I know that obviously in the last podcast, I mentioned Shea opening. Um, but what I just remembered as well is that Justin Graves has had two exceptional seasons opening the batting in
Yeah.
regional
Yeah.
cricket as
Yeah.
well.
True.
I
Yeah.
completely forgot that. Sorry,
Yeah.
Justin. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, so there are options and there are ways that they could tweak a few little things to,
Yeah.
you know, I guess, see what works, what doesn't work, what sticks, what doesn't stick. Obviously, Amir Django regionally bats in the top three for Trinidad and Tobago
Yeah.
as well. I mean, so it's not a situation where all is lost or
No.
it's
No.
completely
Not at all.
broken. As I said, it's just a situation where they just need to regroup, and come again.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see whether they play what wicket they play on as well on Friday. Whether they go with something similar. Because I know that obviously I don't know whether something will be. Well, I didn't notice if anything was. It looks like it was going to be prepared to whether use a used wicket.
Maybe they'll go for a used wicket. Not much work to do. I don't think that
I
the,
don't
the
know.
pitch
I don't
sort
know.
of changed too drastically from the first innings to the second innings
No,
today
not
as well.
particularly. No.
The ball's still a little bit early doors for the Irish bowlers,
Yeah.
second innings. So, I mean, probably maybe a bit flatter, maybe offers a bit of turn towards the back end of
Possibly. Possibly.
of the next game. Obviously, if they go the same with it because of the wear and tear.
Yeah.
But I think pretty much for Ireland, it will be a situation of try and repeat the same.
Yeah, no. I'm looking forward to seeing how it unfolds on Friday. And obviously, me and you will catch up again to review it. But again, good to talk it through. And not all negative, some positives in there, which is what we want to talk about.
100%, loads of positives in there. So, as I said, looking forward to whatever changes, if any, that they make. And that's not just with the 11. That's with, I would guess, the way they approach the game
Of
and the
course,
way
yeah.
the game unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Kai, as always. And people, listening, watching, we really do value your feedback. So do let us know in terms of what you thought of the game, any changes that you'd make in terms of whether that be personnel changes for the next ODI or changes with slight tactics or things. Karen will get back to you. We love listening to your thoughts, and we really do appreciate it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very
And,
much.
and share, just send it to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm giving you all this information for free. You don't have to pay for it. Just share it with your friends.
Exactly, yeah. Well, thank you very much, guys. See you all soon.